I'm going to tell you a story that still keeps me up at night. A story about family, pride, and the kind of betrayal that hits you so hard, you can almost feel the air leave your lungs. And I promise you this: if you think you've heard it all when it comes to family drama, you're wrong. Because the way this ended, it shocked even me. So settle in. This is not just a story. It's a confession. And by the time I'm done, you might start questioning the people closest to you. I'm a simple man. I've never been rich. I've never been flashy. I've worked hard my entire life, and though I never made millions, I took pride in the fact that I provided for my family. My daughter, Emily, was my world. I raised her on my own after her mother passed away when she was only 6. I missed birthdays because I was working double shifts, skipped meals so she could eat, and went without so she could have the things her friends had. I thought that kind of love, the kind that comes with sacrifice, was unshakable. But I was wrong. The first crack in the glass came the day Emily got engaged. She came over, her face glowing, a diamond sparkling on her finger. I was so happy for her. We laughed, we hugged, we planned. But looking back now, that was the last time things felt normal. Slowly I started noticing changes in her. Little things at first. Calls that used to last an hour were cut down to minutes. Wedding plans were whispered about instead of shared openly. I brushed it off, thinking she was just busy or caught up in the excitement. Then one afternoon she asked me to meet her at a cafe. I thought maybe she wanted my help with the wedding budget or the guest list. Instead, she looked me dead in the eye and said words I will never forget. "Dad, I don't think you should be in the wedding photos. People will talk. You just don't look like you belong in them." At first I laughed. I thought it was some kind of joke in poor taste. But she didn't laugh back. She sat there, staring at me with a coldness I'd never seen before. And in that moment, something inside me cracked wide open. My own daughter, the one I'd given my life for, was ashamed of me. Ashamed of how I looked, how I dressed, and maybe even of how little money I had. I walked out of that cafe in a daze, my ears ringing, my chest tight. But as I sat alone in my car, staring at the steering wheel, a strange calm came over me. Because if she thought I was too poor to be in her wedding photos, well, she had no idea what I was capable of. And that's when I decided I was going to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. So stay with me. Because by the end of this story, you'll see exactly how a poor man bought the very ground his daughter was standing on, and made her beg for his forgiveness. Oh, and before we go any further, please subscribe to this channel. You won't want to miss how this plays out. I was born on a road without streetlights, the kind where you can still see the sky breathing. My father taught me how to fix what other men threw away: radios, bikes, washing machines with stubborn drums. I learned early that almost everything broken wants to work again if you give it time, patience, and clean hands. That became my quiet religion. Repair what you can, endure what you can't, and keep a small flame lit for the people you love. When Emily arrived, swaddled and loud and perfect, I lit every flame I had. Her mother, Ruth, was the kind of woman who made a room feel like the first warm day of spring. She died when a car swerved where it shouldn't have, and grief parked itself in our home and refused to move. Emily was 6. The night after the funeral, she hid under our dining table, clutching a chipped teacup she'd stolen from the kitchen. "It's for Mom," she whispered, "in case she's thirsty up there." I pulled her out and held her on my lap until the house grew blue with dawn. "We'll keep a cup for her," I said, kissing her hair. "And we'll keep going." So we did. I learned to braid hair badly at first, then with an engineer's stubborn precision. I stitched hems and hems inside hems when Emily went through growth spurts as if her bones were trying to outrun the rest of her. I packed lunches cut into shapes: stars, hearts, crooked suns. I worked early mornings at the repair shop, late nights at the warehouse, and in between I made every school play, every dentist appointment, every parent-teacher meeting where the teacher would smile and say, "She's bright. She's got grit." That was Emily, small but iron-willed, the sort of girl who'd save worms after a rainstorm, then argue with you about why their lives mattered. I saved where I could: coins in coffee tins, bills in envelopes with blocky labels. Rent, lights, shoes, Emily, college. It wasn't much, not compared to the men who wore watches that cost more than my whole car, but it was honest and it was ours. I didn't complain when my back ached or when Christmas came with second-hand gifts. I only wished Ruth could see the way Emily's eyes lit up at a book, at a new set of colored pencils, at a used microscope I rescued from a school supply auction. We were a team. For years, that's what we said when the rent went up or a tire went flat or the water heater coughed and died in late January. "We're a team," I'd say, rubbing my hands under cold water. "We'll figure it out." And she'd nod, serious as a judge. "We always do. Time has a way of turning children into strangers you love." By the time Emily went to college, she had refined edges, straightened teeth, steady posture, a voice that learned to fill rooms. She wrote papers with titles I didn't understand and brought home friends with names I mispronounced. I bought a suit for her graduation, dark blue, cheap but respectable. The tag scratched my neck, but I didn't care. When her name was called and she walked across that stage, I clapped until my palms stung. "That's my girl," I said to the woman beside me. The woman nodded politely, as strangers do, and then turned away. After graduation came jobs with email signatures and office kitchens and an ecosystem of happy hours where people who could afford artisanal cocktails argued about whose startup would save the world. Emily moved into a better apartment than I'd ever lived in, with plants that thrived in bright windows and a couch that looked like a cloud took a nap in our living room and refused to leave. Then she met him. His name was Jason, and he had the kind of confidence that makes waiters stand straighter. He worked in finance, which is to say he moved numbers around with a grace that made other people's numbers multiply. He came from a family with a last name that opened doors and sat on donor walls. The first time I met him, he shook my hand like he was giving me a gift and told me he admired men who work with their hands. I smiled because it's polite to accept flattery even when it's wrapped in distance. At dinner, his parents arrived 10 minutes late, not rushed at all. His mother, Veronica, wore a watch the size of a moon and a dress that could pay my rent for half a year. His father, Greg, wore silence like a suit and asked me what I thought of the market. I told him I preferred markets that sold tomatoes. Veronica laughed too loud, too long. "How quaint," she said. "Tomatoes." But I watched the way Jason pulled out Emily's chair, the way he pressed her hand under the table when she got excited and talked too fast. He looked at her the way a man looks at a door he plans to walk through and never leave. And she glowed. What can I say? I wanted her happy more than I wanted to be comfortable. I told myself we were just different kinds of people living in the same world. The engagement was quick. 3 months after their first anniversary dinner, on a rooftop that made the city look like a painting. Photographs appeared on her feed, a ring that could blind, a sunset that seemed hired. The caption read, "Forever to the man who saw me when I didn't see myself." I clicked the heart because that's what you do when your own heart is making room for bigger things. For a while it felt like we were still a team. Emily called breathless to ask if she could borrow my old toolbox for a DIY centerpiece idea. She texted me swatches and asked if taupe was too boring or just elegant. We met for lunch and she put her phone face down. "I want you to walk me down the aisle," she said, chewing her lip like she did when she was 6. "Of course," I said, my throat thick. "Of course." But subtle edits began. At first it was just scheduling. "Dad, the tasting is on Thursday afternoon, can you get off work?" I could, but it cost me hours I couldn't afford. Then it was logistics. "Dad, the hotel we picked it's upscale. Maybe I can book you a room at a quieter place that's more your speed." I didn't know what my speed meant. I only knew I had changed her diapers and taught her to ride a bike, and none of that required speed. Then the cafe. The sentence. The air leaving my lungs. "Dad, I don't think you should be in the wedding photos. People will talk. You just don't look like you belong in them. If you've never had your child turn you into a liability, I hope you never do." I stared at her and saw fragments. The little girl with the chipped teacup, the teenager who stood up to a bully in 8th grade, the young woman who promised we'd always be a team. All of them were sitting across from me and none of them were. The Emily in front of me had learned a new language. Optics, perception, brand. "Is that what Jason said?" I asked, my voice steadier than the ground felt. She flinched. "It's not like that." "How is it then?" She glanced around the cafe like the answer might be hiding behind the espresso machine. "It's just, the guest list is full of his father's colleagues. Their expectations are different. And the photographer, he suggested we think about composition and aesthetics. Clean lines. A unified look." "A unified look," I repeated. "And I don't look unified." "Dad," she whispered, frustrated. "Please don't make this ugly." I almost laughed. As if the ugliness hadn't already been planted, watered, and given a window seat. "Emily," I said, and it felt like I was lifting a boulder with my tongue. "If you don't want me in your photos, say it plain. Don't hide it behind composition." Her jaw trembled. "I just think it would be better. For everyone. For everyone. Not for me." I walked out into a sky the color of unspilled milk and sat in my car. The steering wheel was too hot, like a fever. I put my hands in my lap and listened to something in me crack. Not clean like a twig but messy like a plate with 1,000 hairline fractures you only see when you hold it to the light. I didn't call her for 3 days. She didn't call me either. On the 4th day a text. "Dad, fittings are Saturday. You should still come for the ceremony. I want you there. I love you." The words looked right. The feeling behind them felt rented. I went to the tux shop anyway. It smelled like cedar and money. Young men in tape measures circled me like birds, clucking at my shoulders, my waist. One held a jacket against my back like he was draping a tarp over a lawnmower. "We can tailor, of course," he assured, with a smile that felt like a diagnosis. Emily arrived with Veronica and 2 bridesmaids who spoke in one voice. "This is fun," they chorused like a commercial. Veronica's gaze skimmed me, a scanner beep. "Classic black," she said. "Keeps it simple." Emily put her hand on my arm. "You look good, Dad." Her eyes flicked to the mirror, to the line where my off-the-rack shoulders failed to become architecture. "We'll make it work." Make it work. I remembered saying that over a busted sink with a spoon for a screwdriver. I remembered laughing when the water finally ran clear. I remembered looking at 6-year-old Emily and saying, "See? We always figure it out." She had believed me then. We went to the venue for a walk through a historic estate an hour outside the city, all white columns and manicured lawns, the kind of place where even the hedges looked like they had publicists. A woman with a clipboard met us at the entrance. "I'm Claire," she chirped, the sort of chirp that told me she'd never had to raise her voice in her life. "On behalf of Waverly House, we're thrilled to be hosting your special day." Jason arrived in a car that purred instead of ran. He kissed Emily without asking if now was a good time. When he shook my hand, he squeezed too hard like he was checking my bones for counterfeit. "Sir," he said, "we're honored you're here." We wandered the property while Claire explained rain plans and lighting packages and something called a champagne wall, which, from what I gathered, was exactly what it sounded like. A wall that served champagne because pouring it into glasses from a bottle like a peasant would not do. We entered the ballroom, where the ceiling soared and a chandelier dripped light like honey. Claire pointed to the far wall, where floor-to-ceiling windows let the afternoon in. "This is the perfect spot for family portraits," she said. "We'll position parents and grandparents along the first row, siblings behind, and then the couple centered, of course." I felt Emily stiffen beside me. She didn't look at me. She looked at her shoes. Jason cleared his throat. "We might do something a little different," he said. "Streamlined." "Of course," Claire said, unbothered. "We can keep it minimal." Minimal? I was learning a new language. After the tour, Claire sent us to the tasting room. A chef in a white jacket presented plates like peace treaties, tiny towers of food where every ingredient had an origin story. Veronica hummed approval. Greg asked about the truffle's provenance and nodded with the solemnity of a surgeon receiving test results. I ate because it was food, and food tastes like mercy to a man who's eaten cold dinner over a sink. But the sweetness stuck in my throat. During dessert, Emily patted my hand. "Dad, maybe you could take a look at the garden while we discuss the seating chart?" She said it lightly, like a suggestion, like a kindness. "Seating chart?" I asked. Jason smiled, apologetic. "Just quick logistics. We'll come get you." I walked outside. The garden was immaculate, flowers lined up like soldiers. A fountain whispered in a language older than money. I stood there and tried to breathe. Over the hedge, I could see the gravel circle where cars would pull up and deposit freight. Hopes, expectations, silk. I tried to picture myself there, straightening my tie, practicing a smile that didn't look like a scar. I heard my name carried on the careful tone of someone trying not to spill anything. "Mr. Hart." Claire approached with professional concern. "The family is finalizing some details. Would you like a coffee? Water?" "I'm fine," I said, a little too sharp. "Thank you." "We want everything perfect for your daughter," she said. She meant it, I think. It was her job to mean it. "Perfect," I repeated. "Yes." When I went back inside, the dessert plates were gone. Emily looked up with that guilty brightness of a child who's hidden something. "We were efficient," she said. "Got a lot done." "Good," I said. Jason slid a glossy booklet across the table. "We mocked up photo concepts with the photographer," he explained. "For Flo." I opened it. I saw a page labeled Family Portraits. I saw Veronica's name, Greg's name, Jason's grandparents, Jason's cousins, an uncle whose honorific was Judge. I saw bride alone, bride with bridesmaids, bride with mother of groom, couple with VIP guests. I saw nothing that said bride with father. I closed the booklet carefully like it might explode. Maybe something in my face changed. Maybe I reached the limit of how invisible a person can be before he starts to glow with the opposite of light. Because Emily reached for my wrist. "Dad. It's your day," I said, my mouth full of sand. You do what you need. The drive home slid past like a bad dream. Streetlights stitched the darkness together, and I watched my hands on the steering wheel as if they belonged to a man I didn't know. At a red light, I remembered teaching Emily to drive in the church parking lot, how she gripped the wheel like it was a life preserver and whispered, "I don't want to crash," and how I said, "I'm right here. We're not crashing today." I slept 3 hours that night and woke feeling like I'd been chewed and spit out by something with too many teeth. At 6 my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Mr. Hart, this is Oliver from Waverly House Accounts. We're confirming the final payment schedule has been communicated to all key parties. Please advise if you need an alternative arrangement for your contribution to the rehearsal dinner." My contribution. I stared at the message until the words lost their shapes. At 9 I showed up to work and turned wrenches until my knuckles went numb. The shop radio played songs about men begging women to come home, and I laughed out loud because life is not without a sense of humor. Around noon my boss, Luis, noticed my laugh and frowned. "You're bleeding, man," he said, nodding at my hand. I looked down and saw a thin red line across my palm. I hadn't felt the cut. I washed it under cold water and watched the pink swirl down the drain. "What's going on?" he asked, gentle like people are when they smell smoke. "My daughter's getting married," I said. "That's good," he said. "It should be." He waited. "They don't want me in the photos," I said, and saying it made it more real and more ridiculous at the same time. Luis didn't say I was overreacting. He didn't say times change, kids change, tastes change. He said, "Damn," and then, "That hurts," and then, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," I said, which was true and not true. There was a shape forming in my mind, the shape of a door I had never considered knocking on. That weekend, there was an engagement party at a country club where the wood smelled expensive and the staff moved like choreography. I wore the blue suit again, steamed and brushed, and the shoes I polished with an old t-shirt. At the entrance, a young man in a blazer scanned a list. "Name?" he asked without looking at me. "Hart," I said. "Father of the bride." He glanced up, surprised. Maybe I didn't look like someone whose daughter belonged there. "Right this way," he said after a beat, and led me into a room where laughter rose and fell like a tide. Veronica kissed the air beside my cheek. "So glad you could make it," she said, as if I were a distant cousin who had arrived from an inconvenient time zone. Greg nodded and said, "Evening," like a password. Emily hugged me and said, "You look handsome," and for a moment the room softened. Then Jason tapped a glass with a spoon and made a speech about love that sounded like it had been run through a filter. People clapped. Waiters refilled glasses. A woman with perfect hair asked me what I did and then said, "Good for you," when I told her. Near the end of the night, when the drinks had lowered defenses and raised voices, I found myself at a high-top table beside the photographer. He was young and hungry, the kind of man who made everything sound like he'd invented it. He showed me his portfolio. The pictures were undeniably beautiful, frozen moments that looked more honest than life. Brides like angels, grooms like men who deserved them. "Lighting is everything," he said. "Angles, composition, clean lines." "Clean lines," I echoed, and he nodded, pleased. "We're doing something really modern for this wedding," he went on. "Minimal family intrusion. Focus on the couple, the brand of the event, the experience." "The brand?" I said. He caught himself. "I mean the story." "The story," I repeated, and excused myself before my mouth betrayed me. Outside the air was cooler. I leaned against a pillar and stared at the dark golf course stretching out like a secret. Through the glass doors I saw Emily laughing, her head thrown back, the way Ruth used to laugh when I said something truly dumb. I remembered the chipped teacup. I remembered we're a team. I remembered that everything broken wants to work again if you give it time, patience, and clean hands. I also remembered the message from the Waverly House accounts office. Money moves mountains in places where apologies can't find footholds. On Monday I called the venue. It took 3 transfers to find Oliver, whose voice had the precise warmth of someone trained to sound human. "Mr. Hart," he said. "How can I assist?" "I had a question about the property," I said, aiming for casual and landing somewhere between weary and polite. "Is Waverly House owned by the family that built it?" Oliver chuckled. "Oh goodness no. The property changed hands a few times. It's currently owned by a holding company. The property itself is, well, there's been discussion." "Discussion?" He hesitated. "We've been open to acquisition offers. Strictly exploratory." "Exploratory," I said, tasting the word. "Hypothetically, if someone were interested in exploring, what would that look like?" Oliver's tone adjusted, a dial turning. "We could set a meeting. Our managing director would outline terms." "I don't have the kind of money you're used to," I said plainly. "But I've got something else. Patience. And clean hands." He didn't know what to do with that, so he did what people do when they don't know. He scheduled a meeting. I didn't tell Emily. I didn't tell Luis. I didn't tell anyone. I dug into every coffee tin, every envelope, every dusty corner where I'd tucked away little futures. I did math on napkins, on receipts, on the back of my hand while I waited for oil to drain from a Chevy with a leaky gasket. I called a credit union that still knew my name. I sold the second car I'd been fixing up on weekends. I called an old army buddy who had once told me after 3 beers that he'd back me if I ever decided to do something stupid and beautiful. He laughed so hard when I told him the plan that I almost hung up. Then he said, "I'm in," and wired me more than I asked for. The meeting at Waverly House was in a room with a long table and a view of the lawn where the champagne wall would live. The managing director was a woman named Elaine, and she wore efficiency like perfume. She asked me questions designed to sort the serious from the delusional. I answered with figures that made her eyebrows adjust. She quoted a price that made mine do the same. "Why this property?" she asked finally, curious despite herself. "My daughter's getting married here," I said. "That's either the worst reason or the best reason," she replied. "We'll find out," I said. "Even if things proceed," she said carefully, "there are contracts in place. Events scheduled." "I wouldn't cancel anything," I said. "Honor every contract. Every guest gets what they paid for." Elaine studied me, tapping a pen against her notebook. "You're not the first person to approach us," she said. "But you are the first who didn't walk in with a lawyer and a logo." "I brought a thermos of coffee," I said, placing it on the table. "It's good." She smiled despite herself. "Let's talk terms." And there, in Act 1 of a story I never intended to write, the ground shifted. It didn't roar, it hummed. That night, I stood in my kitchen, the dim light making everything look like a memory, and I laid out the paperwork like maps. If I pulled this off, I wouldn't be rich. I'd be leveraged to the eyebrows. I'd also be something else, a man who refused to be erased. I thought about calling Emily. I imagined her voice, how it would either break or harden when I told her I was trying to buy the venue where she planned to hide me. I imagined her saying, "Why would you do that?" And me answering, "So you'll remember where you come from." I imagined her saying, "This is insane," and me answering, "Maybe. But so is telling your father he doesn't belong in your story." I didn't call. Not yet. Let the shape finish forming. In the days that followed, small humiliations kept their appointments. A group text about tuxedo accessories that left me off. An email from Jason's sister with a link to a Father of the Bride style guide featuring men with tans I didn't have and watches I wouldn't buy if I did. A voicemail from Veronica. "We've arranged transportation for you on the day, an Uber Black, so you don't have to worry about parking." I stared at my truck, which had carried Emily to every dentist appointment and soccer game, and I felt a hot, foolish loyalty to its dented door. I said nothing. I signed papers. I found numbers where I didn't know numbers lived. I ate at my kitchen table and listened to the house creak, the way old things do when they're deciding whether to hold. One evening, a week before the rehearsal dinner, Emily stopped by my place unannounced. She hasn't done that in years. I opened the door and there she was, in jeans and a sweatshirt that said yes to the dress like a joke she was trying to believe. "Hey Dad," she said. Her eyes swept the room, then my face. "You look tired." "I am," I said. "You are too." She nodded and sank into the couch like it was familiar, which it was. For a few minutes we sat in the comfortable quiet of people who have known each other in 1,000 versions. "Can I be honest?" she asked finally, staring at her hands. "I would like nothing more." "I'm scared," she said, the word small, almost embarrassed. "Everything feels like it's moving fast and I don't know. I want it to be perfect. I want everyone to look at the photos and see a life that makes sense." "A life that makes sense," I repeated. "To who?" She shrugged, helpless. "To the people who matter." "You matter?" I said. "You've always mattered." She blinked hard and looked away. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "You did," I said gently. "But I've been hurt worse. And I've healed." "Are you coming to the rehearsal?" she asked after a beat. "I am." "Good," she said, and then, so quietly I almost missed it, "I want you there." She left with leftovers I insisted she take. On the porch she hugged me, quick and stiff, and then for a second like she used to, arms tight, face in my neck. "Love you," she said into my shirt. "Love you more," I said, because that had always been our script. After she drove away, I stood under the porch light and watched the night settle in the yard. Somewhere in the distance, a train sounded a long, lonely note, and I thought of all the tracks we lay without knowing where they lead. At the repair shop the next morning, Luis handed me a small box wrapped in newspaper. "Open it later," he said before I could ask. "Consider it equity." Inside, during lunch, I found an old pocket watch he'd kept for years in a drawer. It ticked steadily, stubbornly. There was a note, for when timing matters more than money. I held the watch and laughed, not because anything was funny but because sometimes the universe sends you a subtitled message. The timing would matter. So, the rehearsal dinner was set at a restaurant with a view of water so calm it felt posed. We ate food with names that required explanations. The toasts began, Veronica's curated warmth, Greg's rehearsed restraint, Jason's polished gratitude. Then Emily stood, glass in hand, and looked at me. "My father," she said, voice unsteady, "taught me how to fix broken things. And how to love what's already whole." She met my eyes. For a moment the room disappeared. "I haven't always been fair. But he's here tonight because he never gave up on us." On me. There was, a thread tossed across a distance. I caught it. I nodded. I felt something loosen, but not enough to undo what had been done. When the plates were cleared and the crowd broke into smaller conversations, Veronica approached. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Tomorrow," she murmured, "a conspirator. A big day." "It is," I said. "I hope you'll keep things simple," she said. "Minimal fuss." "Minimal," I echoed. "Clean lines." She tilted her head, thrown. "Exactly." I excused myself, stepped outside to the terrace and took out the pocket watch. The second hand circled with patient confidence. Somewhere behind me, laughter rose. Somewhere ahead of me, a door waited to be opened with a key made of paper and signatures. I put the watch back in my pocket, squared my shoulders, and looked out over the water. The night smelled like rain that hadn't made up its mind yet. If they didn't want me in the picture, they shouldn't have asked me to hold the camera. 2 days before the wedding, the sky couldn't decide between blue and bruised. I woke early anyway, the way you do when your mind keeps driving all night. Coffee tasted like metal. The pocket watch ticked on the counter, stubborn and steady, as if to say, "Hold your line." I had meetings. Quiet ones. The kind that happen in borrowed offices with blinds half closed. Elaine slid a folder toward me. Terms, contingencies, words that could rearrange a life if you said yes to them at the right time. "There's still diligence," she said. "Title. Insurance. Final wire by Friday at 5 p.m. "Friday at 5, I repeated. "Cut off." She studied me. "You're calm." "I learned to change a timing belt with a flashlight between my teeth," I said. "This is similar. Just cleaner." Her mouth twitched. "If we proceed, you won't say anything?" "Not a breath," I said. "Everything on the calendar happens. No cancellations. No drama." Her pen hovered. "Why, Mr. Hart?" "Because my daughter asked me not to make things ugly," I said. "And I can do that. Even now." We shook hands. Paper touched paper. The sound it made was smaller than the moment felt. On my way out, I saw Claire in the hallway, cradling a clipboard like a baby. "All set for Saturday?" she asked in that bright, trained tone. "Looks like," I said. "We're delivering the champagne wall tomorrow," she said. "And the string quartet does their sound check at 3. It's all coming together." "Everything always does," I said. Then, for reasons I couldn't explain, "Do you like working here?" She blinked. "I do." "Good," I said. "I like when people like where they stand." I was back at the shop by noon, turning a rusted bolt that refused to believe in change. Luis watched me struggle, then handed me the right wrench without a word. When the bolt finally yielded with a sigh, he said, "Whatever you're building, I hope they deserve it." "They don't," I said honestly. "But she used to." "I'm doing it for the girl who kept a teacup under the table." He nodded. "Then do it." My phone buzzed, a message from a group chat I'd been added to called Ceremony Logistics. The participants list was a novel planners, bridesmaids, a floral designer who spoke in adjectives, Jason's sister Brooke, and Veronica, who could turn any sentence into policy. Someone named as visual director had attached a PDF titled Father of the Bride Protocol. I opened it. Arrive 2:10 p.m. Remain in foyer until escorted. No unscheduled interactions with photographer. No public toasts during dinner. Refrain from emotionally disruptive displays. There was a line at the bottom that made me laugh out loud in the empty stockroom. Dress code, tuxedo black tie. Limit cufflinks to matte or satin. Avoid novelty accessories. I typed and deleted 10 versions of the same reply. Finally I wrote, confirmed. See you at 2:10. When you're walking into a storm, sometimes you lower your head and pretend it's just weather. That night Aunt May called. My sister has never learned to whisper. I heard about the photos, she said, no preamble. Explain it to me like I'm a toddler before I march down there with my church hat and start flipping tables. The tables are too heavy, I said. You'd throw your back out. Don't play with me, Daniel. Did she really say you can't be in them? She said it would be better. For everyone. Everyone, she snorted. Jason's family ain't everyone. They're a bunch of somebodies who think they invented breath. She's scared, I said, of not fitting. She fits fine, May shot back. They're the ones pinching. I could picture her in her kitchen rolling dough like a therapy session. You coming Saturday? I asked. You couldn't keep me away with a stick, she said. Softening, she added, you okay? I will be, I said. Daniel, she warned. Don't do anything that gets you thrown out of there. I won't get thrown out, I said. I didn't add, because I'll be the one holding the door. Friday morning my army buddy Tate texted a photo, a wire confirmation and a thumbs up. You better invite me to the documentaries, he wrote. No documentaries, I replied. Just a story for the grandkids I don't have yet. At 4:17 p.m., the final approval email from the title company landed like a quiet bell. At 4:58, the last wire cleared. At 5:06, Elaine called. Mr. Hart, she said. Congratulations. I blew out a breath I didn't know I'd been saving. Thank you. There's something else, she said. The previous owner had a little tradition. When a new owner takes over Waverly, the staff gathers in the ballroom to sign a ledger. We keep a copy in the office, one in the safe, one framed in the back hall. Sounds ceremonial, I said. It is, she said. Won't interfere with any events. We can do it early. Saturday morning. Quietly. Saturday morning, I repeated. Quiet is good. I put the phone down and rested my hands on the table. They were shaking. Not fear. Not victory. Something like both. I whispered to the empty kitchen. Ruth, if you're listening, I'm trying to do this with dignity. You know I was never good at theatrics. Then I laughed because Act 2 of any story demands theatrics whether you're good at them or not. An hour later, Emily called. Hey Dad, she said, breathless. Kitchen sounds in the background. I'm at the hotel. Tomorrow's the day. Tomorrow's the day, I echoed. How are you? Nervous, she said. Like the kind of nervous that feels like you swallowed a bee. You were like that before your second grade recital, I said. Remember? You held my hand so hard my ring made an imprint. She laughed. I remember you wore the wrong socks. I wore the socks I had, I said. And you were perfect. Silence hummed. Then she said, I'm sorry about all of it. If I could rewind. You'd do it differently, I finished. Maybe you still can. I don't know how to fix it, she whispered. Sometimes you don't, I said. Sometimes you just decide who you're going to be next. Will you stand with me before the ceremony? She asked. Just for a minute. I'll be there, I said. 2:10. 2:10, she repeated and hung up before either of us said I love you, because some words are too heavy to lift when your arms are full. Saturday morning came dressed like a promise. The sun finally picked a side and landed on bright. I shaved carefully. The tux fit better than it had any right to. I held the pocket watch in my palm until its tick settled my pulse. Then I drove. At 8:30, the Waverly staff gathered in the ballroom. Claire, the kitchen crew in crisp whites, two groundskeepers who looked like they'd seen more of life than lawns. Elaine stood at the head of a folding table where an old leather book waited. The chandelier was dimmed, morning light spilling across the floor like milk. "This is a formality," Elaine said softly. "But it matters to us." I signed my name. Daniel Hart. The letters looked too small for the room they'd just entered. Claire stepped forward. "On behalf of the staff," she said, cheeks pink with formality, "welcome." "Thank you," I said. "Keep doing what you're doing. I don't want to change the part that works." A ripple of relief moved through the room. People like their jobs. People fear new bosses. I wasn't there to be anyone's fear. By 10, the property had transformed. Trucks hummed, florists fluttered in a cloud of stems and pins. Someone rolled a carpet across the entry like royalty had RSVP'd. I stayed out of the way, watching the choreography of competence, the best kind of dance. At noon, Veronica arrived, wearing a daytime diamond smile. She saw me near the terrace and blinked as if I'd materialized out of bad weather. "Oh," she said. "You're early." "I'm not in the way," I said. "Just remember the plan," she said, lowering her voice. "No speeches. No surprises. Clean lines," I said. She smiled, relieved that I'd learned my script. "Clean lines," she echoed and glided away, already editing the air. Brooke appeared from nowhere, a tablet in her hand and an earpiece coiled at her neck like a pet snake. "Hi, Daniel," she said with the sugary brightness some people save for talking to children and the help. "Quick housekeeping. We've assigned you to table 17 back left, near the service door. You'll love it, easy access to the restrooms." I stared at her, then at the tablet where my name indeed sat like a footnote beside the exit. "Table 17, I repeated. She misread my silence as gratitude. "We also routed your entrance to avoid the photographer's uplight grid. Keeps the floor clean." She tapped something. "Oh, and one more thing. No phones during the ceremony. It ruins the guest experience." "What about the father of the bride experience?" I asked quietly. She smiled, confused. "We've optimized for the brand." "There it is," I said. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "Table 17 is fine." It wasn't fine. But in that moment, I understood something that neither anger nor sorrow could teach me. They weren't cruel because they were monsters. They were cruel because their world had edited out anything that didn't fit inside a frame they could control. An eye-old suit, scarred hands, stories instead of status didn't fit. At 1:50, I was in the foyer like the PDF commanded. The air smelled like peonies and lemon polish. A young attendant with nervous eyes checked his checklist. "Mr. Hart," he said. 210. 210, I confirmed. While I waited, I heard voices halfway down the hall. "Jason and Greg." "Optics matter," Greg was saying. "We've worked too hard to have a messy narrative." Jason's voice lower. "I handled it. He'll be in the back. Emily caved on the photos, but we'll curate." Curate? I tasted rust. I stepped into the corridor just enough that they saw me. Jason flinched, then recovered. "Sir," he said, stepping forward, hand extended. "Big day." "Big day," I said, ignoring his hand. "You good at taking care of people, Jason?" "I try," he said, defensive rising like a blush. "Start with my daughter," I said. "That'll be enough work for a lifetime." Greg inserted himself, voice oiled. We appreciate everyone's cooperation. Of course you do, I said lightly. It's the cheapest thing in the room. Before the conversation could curdle, Emily appeared, hair soft, eyes bright like a secret. Dad, she said, and there was no one else in the hallway for a second. Can I steal you? She pulled me into a side room that smelled like starch and steam. Bridal prep overflow. A seamstress pinned last-minute adjustments on a bridesmaid while a makeup artist airbrushed serenity onto a jittery face. Emily shut the door and leaned against it. I just needed a minute with you, she said. No microphones. No agendas. Mi casa is side room, I said. It landed. She smiled the way she used to when she thought I was funnier than I was. I had a nightmare last night, she whispered. I was walking down the aisle and when I got to the end there was no one there. Just empty space. I'm here, I said. I always will be. She swallowed hard, then squared her shoulders. Okay, let's do this. At 2:10 sharp, an usher opened the foyer door and gestured like a game show model. I walked beside Emily to the threshold, then stopped. You ready? I asked. She squeezed my arm. I am. The music swelled. The doors opened. We moved. The aisle was a bright river of faces. People turned and appraised clothes, posture, income. I ignored them and looked at Emily, who looked at Jason, who looked at a future he believed he had completely designed. Halfway down, I felt something like a hand on my back that wasn't there. Not pushing. Steadying. I've done hard things in my life. This felt like all of them wearing one suit. At the end, I kissed Emily's forehead and placed her hand in Jason's. He nodded, grateful like you thank a man who returns your wallet. The officiant began. Words you've heard before because weddings run on script. Love is patient. Love is kind. Vows, rings, a tremble that made the crowd lean forward in hunger. When the officiant asked, if anyone objects, Emily's eyes flew to mine, panicked. I gave the slightest shake of my head. Not today. Not here. Sometimes mercy is stopping a wildfire before it starts. They kissed. People cried. The quartet slid into an upbeat bow. Cameras clicked like insects. We recessed. Outside, guests flooded the lawn, champagne flutes finding their owners like guided missiles. Veronica materialized to air-kiss Emily. Greg clapped Jason's shoulder like he'd just closed a deal. A bridesmaid handed me water because hydration is key, and then whisked away before I could say thank you. The photographer barked gently, bridal party, mother of the groom. Groom's family, yes, all of you. He positioned them with a sculptor's hands, calling out numbers like a coach. I watched from the shade of a column, where the lemon polish smell gave way to cut grass and money. Claire approached, an apologetic tilt to her smile. We'll do family of the bride shots in the orchard, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Are there apples? Just light, she said. In the orchard, the light was indeed kind, soft, forgiving. The photographer placed Emily between Veronica and a grandmother who looked like she'd invented the word legacy. He didn't look toward the tree where I stood, a shadow length away, hands folded like I was at church. Bride with mother of groom, he called. Bride with groom's grandparents. Bride with groom and VIPs. Bride with father, Claire said quietly, almost to herself like she was testing the sound of it. The photographer hesitated, then glanced at his list. Brooke appeared at his elbow, whispering something. He nodded. We'll circle back, he said. We didn't. When they moved toward the ballroom for cocktail hour, I felt the loneliness hit me not as emptiness but as a crowd of every time I'd been invisible in the service of someone else's narrative. I stood there until the laughter faded and the orchard hummed with bees brave enough to ignore human pageantry. Mr. Hart. It was Claire. You okay? Not today, I said. Tomorrow maybe. She followed my gaze. I can insist, she said. It sounded like treason. Don't, I said. It's not your fight. Inside, table 17 was exactly where Brooke had promised by the service door. My place card was plain like an admission. The centerpiece was beautiful in a way that made me tired. A waiter I'd never met leaned in and whispered, "If you need anything, you ask for Marco. I got you." It was the kindest thing anyone had said to me all day. During dinner, Jason toasted and thanked family who made us who we are. Veronica toasted taste, and Greg toasted discipline. Aunt May, God bless her, raised her glass and said, "To men who show up with their hands, not just their wallets." There was an audible ripple. Veronica smiled, thin and white. Halfway through the main course, Brooke tapped a fork to her glass. "A small housekeeping note," she said into the mic. "We've created a photo experience on the south lawn. After dessert, we'll invite selected family units to participate." Selected. The word slid across the room like a dangerous knife everyone pretended was art. A man at my table, friend of the groom's father, investment something, leaned toward me. "Which side are you with?" he asked. "The bride," I said. He studied me. I didn't see you in the video montage." "Must have been an edit," I said. When the time came, Brooke did as promised. "Groom's family to the south lawn," she called. "Bride and groom stay for a special shot. And then, we'll call the rest by table number." Table 1 went. Table 2 went. I watched the parade with a strange calm. My pocket watch ticked in my vest like a small animal. When she reached table 17, Brooke glanced my way, then at her tablet. "We're good," she said into the mic, skipping the number like a cuss in church. That would have been the moment in a different story, where the father stands and shouts, where chairs scrape and gasps multiply. But I wasn't writing that story. Not today. Today I stood, quietly left through the service door they generously placed me near, and walked across the terrace into the hall that leads to the manager's office. Elaine met me there right on time, like we'd rehearsed it and hadn't. "Mr. Hart," she said, handing me a slim envelope. "Welcome packet. He's codes. HR forms, sign later." "Thank you," I said. I slipped the envelope into my inside pocket, next to the watch. 2 steady heartbeats. "Everything okay?" she asked, hearing the party roar like ocean outside a window. "Everything's perfect," I said, and we both let the lie sit between us until it lost its edge. In the hallway, I passed the framed ledgers of owners gone by, names with rings to them. Bankers, industrialists, a woman who built a chain of grocery stores out of a horse and buggy operation. Next to the glass, a small plaque read, "Stewards of Waverly House." I almost laughed. Stewardship was a holy word where I grew up. Keep the thing you're given. Leave it better. Don't confuse ownership with meaning. At the door to the ballroom, Marco intercepted me with a plate of dessert. "For the road," he said. "You look like a man who forgets to eat when thinking." "I do," I admitted. "Thank you." "You're the bride's father, right?" he asked. "I am." He nodded toward the clinking glassware in curated joy. "Don't let them make you small," he said, and vanished. I ate the cake on the terrace, alone. It was excellent. I decided to remember that, too. Back inside, the DJ had taken over from the quartet. The dance floor was a movie. Emily and Jason swayed, photogenic. Veronica floated. Greg approved. I stood in the shadow near a column and watched my daughter dance with a man I wanted to believe would learn. A small hand tugged my sleeve. A flower girl, earnest and freckled, whispered, "Are you the bride's dad?" "I am," I said. "She looks like a princess," the girl declared. "She looks like herself," I said. "That's better." The kid ran off, unburdened by optics. Near the end of the evening, there was a final indignity. Brooke, again microphone in hand. "For our last group shot," she trilled, "we'll bring the core family to the stage." Veronica's eyes skimmed me and then looked past, like I was furniture in a familiar room. The photographer lifted his camera. "Core family," he called, cheerfully ruthless. I stepped back into the column's shadow. Knowing the turning point was close didn't dull the sting. It clarified it. You can know a fire is controlled and still flinch. Aunt May appeared at my elbow, eyes fierce. "Say the word," she hissed, "and I'll make a scene Nancy from accounting will talk about until retirement." "Not yet," I said. "Go dance for me. Boy, you better let me do something before I boil." "You stayed," I said and kissed her forehead. "That's something." She glared, then stomped off to request a song older than everyone in the room. When it was over, when the last sparkler had sputtered and the last guest had left a lip mark on a glass and a crumb trail to the door, I helped a server fold a chair because my hands needed to do something honest. Claire thanked me with tired eyes. The photographer walked by cradling his equipment like holy objects and didn't see me. Brooke took off her heels and winced, and I almost felt sorry for her humanity. Almost. Emily found me in the foyer. Her makeup had surrendered to the day. She looked more like my kid like that. "Dad," she said, and I heard the apology hiding under my name. "I wanted to get a photo, just us, but everything was so busy," I said. "I know. I'm sorry," she blurted. "I tried." "I know," I said again because I did. I knew she had tried to be two women at once, the one who believed we were a team and the one who believed in optics. That kind of split exhausts a person. Jason appeared, smoothing his tie. "We're heading to the car," he said, a question that was not really a question. "Congratulations," I said. He stuck out his hand, a reflex more than a gesture. I took it, squeezed just enough for him to feel the difference between grip and grasp. "Take care of her," I said. "That's your real job." He nodded, chastened by something he couldn't name. Emily leaned in and hugged me, the stiff kind you give in public when the private hug will make you cry. "I love you," she whispered into my neck. "I love you more," I said, our old script, and released her before either of us drowned in what wasn't said. They walked out into a night that had decided to be kind after all. The car purred. The driver opened doors like secrets. Flashbulbs, phones mostly popped. Cheers rose. It was cinematic. It was fine. I stood in the entry while staff began the quiet miracle of undoing a day, tablecloths stripped, glassware counted, florals triaged into take-home bundles. The building exhaled. I put my hand on the banister. Wood remembers. I felt absurdly like it remembered me. When I finally turned to leave, Claire was waiting with a small paper bag. "For you," she said. "Cake slices. And this." She slipped a folded print into the bag. It was a candid me and Emily in the side room, her head tipped back, laughing at something I'd said. The light in it was honest. "How," I began. "I told the second shooter to follow you," she said, almost defiant. Some stories deserve receipts. I swallowed hard. Thank you. She nodded toward the office corridor. We'll see you tomorrow? For owner things? Tomorrow, I said. Outside, my truck looked out of place and exactly right. I sat in the driver's seat and didn't start the engine. The pocket watch ticked faithful. The envelope with the keys was warm against my chest. My daughter looked me in the eyes and said, "You are not welcome here," I said to the empty cab, repeating the sentence that had reorganized my life. Then I looked through the windshield at Waverly House, lit from within like a held breath, and added, softly, "So I made sure I was." The turning point was a door, and it was already open. Morning came in quiet pieces, the kind of light that sneaks under blinds and sets the dust floating like snow. My tux hung on the back of a chair, newly wrinkled with memory. The pocket watch ticked from the nightstand, relentless and kind. Somewhere across town, my daughter was waking up a wife. Somewhere in the middle, a ledger had my name in it. Brunch was scheduled for 11 at Waverly House, farewell festivities for the inner circle. Veronica called it a last chance optics moment, which is the sort of phrase that makes you want to scrub your ears. I arrived early again because early is how I steady myself. The lawn wore yesterday's joy like perfume, sweet, faint, stubborn. Staff were already moving, clearing, polishing. A woman in housekeeping hummed a hymn my mother used to sing when she ironed, a small religion of repetition and heat. Claire met me near the ballroom with a clipboard and an expression that said she'd slept as little as I had. "Owner things," she said, lifting the corner of a smile. "We'll keep it brief." Elaine waited in the office, hair in a Saturday ponytail that made her look 10 years softer. She set a small stack of documents in front of me. Tax forms, HR basics, a sheet labeled emergency procedures that would make a lawyer proud, and a firefighter nod. She handed me a lanyard with a plain access card. "This gets you everywhere," she said. "You shouldn't need it often, but it's yours." I held the card like it was heavy. A rectangle of plastic and the end of invisibility. "There's one thing," she added, tapping a highlighted line. "Per policy, we send a standard notice to vendors and the city records office when ownership changes. It's routine. But because of today's event, we can cue it to go out at 5 p.m. instead of immediately. Quiet like we promised." "Quiet?" I said, tasting the word. I thought of Veronica's smile, Brooke's tablet, the photographer's clean lines, Jason's curated life. Quiet had protected them. Quiet had erased me. But quiet had also protected Emily from a scene she'd never forget. 5 p.m., I said. "Send it then." Elaine nodded. "You're sure?" "I am." She hesitated, then said, "For what it's worth, my father was a janitor. He used to bring home stories like tools. The people who matter are almost never the ones insisting they do." I liked Elaine in that moment, the way you like a stranger on a train who tells you the exact truth of one thing and then gets off at the next stop. In the ballroom, staff were laying out a long buffet, fruit that looked hand-painted, eggs in a chafing dish that could double as a mirror, pastries like architecture. The string quartet had been replaced by a jazz trio with sleeves rolled to the elbow. Light pooled in the corners, expensive even when it was free. Guests trickled in the way wealthy people do, confident they're arriving into a world prearranged for their comfort. Veronica first, brisk and lemony, tapping at something on her phone between greetings. Greg followed, salute, smile intact. Then Jason's cousins, polished like river stones. Then Brooke, barefoot in designer flats, tablet already alive with color-coded blocks. I took a spot by the French doors where I could be near and apart. People glanced at me the way you look at a painting you don't recognize in a familiar hallway. A man with a pocket square folded like origami nodded at my suit. "Sticking with classic," he said. "Respect." "It's what I own," I said simply. He mistook that for a joke and laughed too hard. Jason arrived with Emily on his arm. She wore a simple dress and the face of someone trying to keep a dozen plates spinning with her mind. When she saw me, something unclenched. "There you are," she breathed, and bless her walked straight to me. "I said I'd be here," I replied. "You look like Saturday after a long week." She laughed. "That's exactly what I feel like." Jason hovered a beat back, calculating whether to include me in his orbit. "Sir," he said, always that respectful distance. "Big night, huh?" "It was," I said. He scratched behind his ear, a tell I'd learned by accident. "Listen about the photos." Emily stiffened. "Jason." "What?" "I'm just saying we'll do a separate shoot, just you and your dad." Cling. "Simple. Maybe at a studio." "Like a passport?" I asked lightly. Jason flushed. "I didn't mean." "I know," I said. "You almost never do." Emily touched my sleeve, a plea and a boundary. "Dad, can we talk later?" "Just us." "Always," I said. The jazz trio slid into something that felt like water and sunlight. People began to glow with mimosas. Brooke took the mic like a flight attendant. "Friends and family, welcome to our farewell fete. If you'll find a seat, we'll start with a few words from the groom's mother." The phrase "few words" has never meant what it says in rooms like this. Veronica thanked donors to the wedding fund, a phrase that would have made my mother pass out, praised vendors by name and used Emily's name like it belonged in her mouth. Then Greg spoke about legacy and Jason spoke about partnership, and the jazz trio played the kind of cheer you have to rent by the hour. I ate quietly because food is a technology for surviving social nonsense. Marco appeared with coffee dark enough to forgive sin. "On the house," he said. "Perks of being," he trailed off, eyes twinkling at a secret only 3 people in the building knew. "Hungry," I said. "It's a perk of being hungry." Halfway through the cinnamon rolls, the first crack of the day presented itself. Not a dramatic boom, not the cinematic sound of justice. A hairline line that only shows when you hold the plate to the light. I found it in the hallway behind the catering station, the corridor with the framed ledgers, the small plaque that read "Stewards of Waverly House," the place no guest ever visits unless they're lost or looking for a phone charger. Voices floated from the office. Not staff. Family. The kind that assume walls will behave. "Not ideal," Brooke was saying, whisper shout. "The owner transfer will pop in city records. If it hits social." Veronica, sharp, controlled. "Then we control the narrative. It's a real estate move. We can say the foundation financed it." Greg, optics. Always optics. "Who is the buyer?" "Did Elaine tell you?" A beat. A chair scraped. "She didn't," Veronica said. "But it doesn't matter. We get ahead of it. We don't let distractions overshadow today's message." Jason, lower, worried. "If it's one of Dad's rivals." Veronica cut him with a smile you could hear. "Then your father has handled worse." More coffee? My name wasn't spoken. It hung there anyway like smoke. I stepped backward, quietly, until the hum of the trio swallowed the voices. So, they knew the idea of a transfer was out there. The rumor insects had begun their work. They didn't know the shape. They were, for once, not in control of the frame. I returned to the ballroom. Emily was at a corner table with Aunt May, heads together the way women conspire to lead a family back from the edge. I watched them for a moment, and my heart did the thing hearts do when they feel the right people in the right light. Then I felt another gaze and found Greg watching me, narrowed and curious. He lifted his glass a millimeter. I lifted mine a millimeter. Men can fight that way for months. The next crack arrived through the side door in the form of a delivery driver with a dolly stacked with boxes. He looked too young to hate his job yet. "Sign?" he asked, offering a tablet to Claire. "What is it?" she asked, confused. "Photographer proofs," he said. "Rush. Marked urgent." He tapped the label. "Brooke, sign off." Claire glanced at the ballroom where Brooke was currently telling a story about a Napa harvest that changed her life. "Put them on the back table," she whispered. "We'll process after." But the young man, new to choreography, rolled the dolly straight past her and into the ballroom like a declaration. He stopped beside table 3, Jason's college friends, and parked the boxes with a thud that turned heads. "Proofs for review," he announced, joyous and doomed. Brooke's smile misfired. Veronica stood with the swiftness of someone who has trained for exactly this moment. "Thank you," she said to the kid, voice sugared cyanide. "We'll handle it from here." But people had heard the word. Proofs. It tugs at something primal in a room full of eyes trained to curate. The jazz stumbled, recovered. The trio leader glanced at his set list like a map. A murmur ran around the edges. "Open one," someone said. "Let's see." Brooke had two choices: fight the tide or surf it. She cut the tape on the top box, slid out a small stack of matte prints, and fanned them with flourish. The first was perfect, Emily's veil lifting on a breeze, Jason's profile cut like an advertisement for jawlines. Applause rippled because applause is a reflex in rooms like this. The second shot, Veronica and Greg with the couple, hands arranged the way magazines post success. Approving hum. The third, Emily laughing with a flower girl, sunlight catching the freckled galaxy scattered across the kid's nose. I like good soup. The fourth, the core family on the stage, Brooke's curation shining. The hum sharpened, something like satisfaction. Then this is how life behaves when it wants a story to turn. The fifth photo slipped free and landed edgewise on the table, spinning like a coin. It stilled, facing upward. It was the candid Claire had slipped me last night. Me and Emily in the side room, her head back, mouth wide open with a laugh that belonged to no one but herself, my face softened beyond pride, beyond hurt, just that honest look fathers get when the child they raised becomes a person in front of them again. The light pooled easy. There were no clean lines. There was a story. The sound in the room altered. A little gasp. A few whispered, "Who took that?" Veronica's lips thinned. Brooke's eyes shot to the exits. Jason's jaw went tight. Emily saw it from across the room and went still to the bones. She moved toward the table like she was underwater, reached out, touched the photo with two fingers the way Catholics touch relics. "Where did you get that?" she asked, voice calm because panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. Claire colored, stepped forward. "Second shooter," she said. I asked him to make sure the day saw what it needed to see." Brooke looked like she wanted to fire Clementine, 3 waiters, the second shooter, and the concept of candidates. "We have a shot list," she said, the way people say, "We have a constitution," when they're losing. Emily lifted the photo and held it tipped toward the light. Then she did the bravest thing I'd seen her do in months. She looked straight at Veronica. "We're making room for this one," she said. "Not a request. A decision." Veronica smiled with her teeth. "Darling, we have a cohesive visual language. Then learn a new language, Emily said, soft and lethal. This is my father. Aunt May made a sound that may or may not have been hallelujah. Someone clapped. It died quick when Veronica's gaze swept like a winter wind. Jason approached, palms pacifying. We'll include it, he said. Of course we will. We'll frame it in the house. Emily didn't look at him. She looked at me. I'm sorry, she said, not dramatic, not performative like a prayer you say because your mouth is finally brave enough to match your heart. I nodded. Words would have broken. It should have been enough, the photo, the apology, the small public recentering. In a different story, the turning point lands there and settles. Everybody breathes out and calls it grace. But the world we live in belongs to people who keep pushing even after the page has turned. Greg stepped into the center of the room and did what men like him do when a script shifts. He took up the mic and reasserted narrative. Friends, he boomed, calm like money, we're so grateful for your presence, your love, your support. It takes a village to build a life, and this room is our village. Speaking of which, he smiled the smile that moves stock prices. We have some exciting news. Our family foundation has successfully negotiated to support Waverly House's next chapter. We're delighted to say the venue will remain in excellent hands under an arrangement we helped facilitate. Applause. Relief. The universe righted in a sentence. Veronica glowed. Brooke exhaled dreams of press releases. Jason looked at his father like he'd pulled the sun out of a hat. I felt in my pocket the edge of the envelope with the keys. The access card warmed. The watch ticked. The whole room turned toward Claire. Confirmation demanded. Claire flicked her eyes to Elaine. Elaine looked at me. I saw the calculation in her gaze. The promise we made for quiet, the truth bent under the weight of a lie, the staff's dignity, the guests' hunger for a story they could understand. My mouth was dry like chalk. I could keep the promise. I could let Greg's version stand for 5 hours and then let email do the talking. I could spare Emily one more public spin. Or I could keep the promise she asked for first, not to make it ugly but to make it true. I stood. Not dramatically. No scraping chair, no dropped fork. Just a man taking air into his lungs and rising. Greg, I said, voice steady, carrying more than I intended. If you don't mind, I'd like to add one note. He blinked, not recognizing my authority to speak. Of course, he said, indulgent. I didn't walk to the mic. I didn't take the center. I simply straightened and spoke from where I stood, near the French doors, so the sun made a liar of anyone who said I looked small. My name is Daniel Hart, I said. I fix things for a living. Small things mostly. Stubborn things. Things people gave up on. Yesterday I walked my daughter to a place she deserves to be. This morning I signed my name in a book that says who takes care of this house. I'm grateful for that privilege. I intend to do it well. Silence gathered dense, curious. What I don't intend to do, I continued, is let anyone take credit for something that isn't theirs, or let this place become another story about money saving the day. The truth is simple, and you can check the records at 5 this afternoon if you like. Waverly House has new ownership. It's me. A ripple moved through the room the way wind moves wheat. Phones lifted like a flock instinct training. Veronica's smile fell off like jewelry. Greg's face slowed, a computer facing an unexpected update. Brooke whispered, "No," to a tablet. I kept my tone calm because the louder a man talks at moments like this, the smaller he is. I'm not canceling contracts, I said. I'm not changing staff. I'm not changing the parts that work. Most of you won't notice a difference. But I will ask you to notice one thing now, the story you tell your friends about what happened here. Tell them it was beautiful. Tell them the food was good. Tell them the light was kind. And tell them that when a father was told he didn't belong in the picture, he made sure he belonged in the frame not by crashing the stage, but by signing the deed and keeping his promises. I looked at Emily. There was water in her eyes the light couldn't burn away. She nodded once small, seismic. Jason's mouth opened because the world had shifted a degree he couldn't account for. Greg's hand tightened on the mic the way men grip a wheel in black ice. He spoke into the space like it owed him. Well, he said with that old dog's charm, this is unexpected. Our foundation is, of course, delighted to support any steward who shares our values. He smiled a knife. We'll be in touch about community partnerships. I look forward to hearing your ideas, I said. We're especially interested in scholarships for kids who don't look like a return on investment. Esme barked a laugh. Say it again for the people in the back, she muttered. Veronica recovered enough to move heels a metronome. She approached me with that boardroom smile pinned back on. Mr. Hart, she said. Congratulations. That's quite a development. It is, I agreed. I do wish you'd told us sooner, she added, hint on a leash. I do wish you'd included me earlier, I returned, the hint off its leash and out of the yard. Her eyes cooled. We all want what's best for Emily. Then let's start, I said. And then came the part one didn't plan. The room did something kind. People clapped. Not all of them don't harbor fantasies about collective courage, but enough. The jazz trio, bless them, struck a bright chord. Marco in the doorway lifted a carafe like a trophy. Claire's shoulders dropped in relief. Elaine allowed herself a smile a quarter-inch wide. Emily crossed the floor slow and sure. When she reached me, she didn't speak. She put her palm on my chest where the pocket watch ticked and laid her forehead against my cheek, a gesture as old as any we ever shared. The room blurred. Time did its mercy. I didn't cry. I also didn't pretend I wasn't close. Jason followed, caught between two weathers. He stuck out his hand because he didn't know what else to do. Congratulations, he said, the word learning its shape in his mouth. Thank you, I said. Take care of her. He swallowed. I will. Greg approached next and the air temperature shifted down 2 degrees. Mr. Hart, he said smoothly, extending a hand I let hover a second longer than manners require. Impressive play. It wasn't a play, I said. It was a correction. He leaned in a hair. You've raised the stakes. No, I said, bored of chess metaphors. I raised my hand. He nodded, friendly as a locked door. We'll talk. We will, I said. But not about ownership. He moved on, smile already reset. Veronica tried one last time because people like her are nothing if not persistent. Perception is reality, Daniel, she said, using my first name like a weapon turning into a bridge. Remember that. I thought of clean lines. Of a chipped teacup. Of the ledger on the wall in a corridor no one visits. Reality is reality, I said. Perception is an expensive hobby. Her eyes flashed. She pivoted away. Brooke? She didn't come near. She was already on her phone, crisis managing her own humiliation. A story had escaped her curation and found its way to light. The spell didn't break so much as shift. People began to talk again, the comfortable rub of wealth over discomfort. The trio swung into something that forgave the moment its edges. Plates clinked, chairs sighed, the building remembered its job. I exhaled. My knees remembered my age. Claire slipped to my side long enough to whisper, "The staff are with you." It was the kindest thing anyone could say to a new owner, better than investors, truer than donors. Thank you, I said. Tell them I intend to be with them. Already did, she said, then vanished back into motion. For the next hour, life practiced being normal. People ate, laughed, gossiped about me because gossip is how communities metabolize change. Aunt May collected 2 phone numbers, 1 centerpiece, and the moral high ground. Marco smuggled me an extra pastry and a wink. Jason introduced me to a college friend like we hadn't just redefined the floor beneath his feet. I shook hands. I thanked the band. I asked the dishwasher's name and memorized it. For every person who looked at me like I'd committed a crime against decorum, 2 looked at me like air. At 10 minutes to 5, I stepped back into the corridor with the ledgers. The light there is different, honest in a way chandeliers can't imitate. I pulled out my phone and typed a short message to Elaine. Go ahead. When I slid the phone back into my pocket, the watch ticked. The second hand leaped forward and did it again. Somewhere in a server rack, an email left Waverly House's domain and entered the world. Somewhere at City Hall, a record moved from pending to public. Somewhere a headline began to draft itself in an intern's mind. I stood in front of the framed ledger and looked at my name inked with the same plain hand I used to sign for parcels. Daniel Hart. Nothing fancy. Everything I am. Dad. Emily's voice behind me, softer than the air. I turned. She stood there alone, hair caught back in a quick tie, eyes clear. I don't want to make excuses, she said. But I want to say this why out loud so I hear it too. I got scared. I thought if everything looked perfect, my life would be. I let people who love their reputations more than they love me tell me who belongs. I forgot you raised me with more spine than that. I didn't rescue her. I let the quiet hold. Yesterday, she continued, I was a person I don't want to be. Today, when I saw that photo, I remembered who I am. I want you in my story. Not in the corners. Not as an afterthought. In the middle, where you've always been. I let out a breath and felt 30 years settle into their right places. I'm not going anywhere, I said. But I also won't beg to be kept. You don't have to, she said, half laugh in it, half sob. You bought the floor. I bought a house, I corrected gently. You and we built the floor. She stepped in and hugged me the way people hug when they're done borrowing versions of themselves that don't fit. I love you, she said, not a script this time, a fact. I love you more, I said, old words trying on a new suit. We stood like that until we both remembered the world. Then she pulled back and wiped her face with the back of her hand like a kid. If I ask you for one favor, will you do it? She asked. If I can. Come take a photo with me, she said. A real one. Not staged. Not curated. Just us. I want it hung in our house where I have to walk by it every day and remember what matters. I can do that, I said, and felt something unspool that had been wound so tight I forgot it wasn't supposed to be. We found Claire. We found the light near the back stair where the paint chips in a way that tells the truth. We didn't pose. We didn't arrange hands like diagrams. We looked at each other and let someone click. It felt like air. As we walked back toward the ballroom, Jason intercepted us, his face practicing humility. Your father is impressive, he said to Emily. The sentence looked like splinters in his mouth. He is, she said. And immutable. He nodded, choosing his next move carefully. We should have had out soon. Flights. Honeymoon schedules. He turned to me. We'll talk when we're back. We will, I said. I'd like to know who you plan to be. He swallowed. Yes, sir. Greg and Veronica were by the door, coats draped over forearms, smile stapled back on. Veronica leaned in to air kiss Emily. Stunning wedding, she said. Stunning weekend. It was, Emily replied evenly. And instructive. Greg shook my hand with the softness of a signing bonus and the calculation of a chess player. "Mr. Hart," he said, a neutrality I respected. "Welcome to stewardship." "Thanks," I said. "We'll see how we both behave." They left in a car that purred because of course it did. Brooke followed, phone to ear, already advising a client in a different ballroom how to avoid what had just happened here. When the last guests had thinned into manageable memories, the staff did what staff do best: transform chaos into order. I joined without being asked because work is where I know how to be. We folded linens. We stacked chairs. We laughed in the tired way people laugh when they survived something together. Near 6, I walked the property alone. The orchard was back to being secretly beautiful instead of rented. The terrace had a few confetti stars that refused to leave rebellions in paper. In the far garden, a sprinkler ticked like my watch. The house loomed, not proud, not humble, just itself. I touched a column the way you touch an old dog's head. On the gravel, I heard footsteps, measured and nervous. Jason. He had doubled back, hands in pockets, a boy who looked good in a suit. "Sir," he said. "Do you have a minute?" "2," I said. He scuffed his dress shoe on the stones. "I don't know how to be in this moment," he admitted. "My whole life I've understood the levers. I pull them. Things move. But this," he gestured at the house, the grounds, the air. "You didn't pull a lever. You became the machine." I almost smiled. "That's not what I did. I didn't scheme against you. I corrected for me." He nodded, grateful for a frame that didn't make him the villain. "I love Emily," he said, and this time the sentence didn't sound like a press release. "Then learn her," I said. "Learn where she comes from. Learn the part of her that doesn't care about clean lines, only true ones." He squared his shoulders. "I will." "We'll see," I said, not unkind. "That's not a threat. It's a husband's curriculum." He stuck out his hand. I took it. This time it didn't feel like a test. When he left, the sky was deciding on a color to keep. I stood there and let the decision wash the day. Behind me, in the staff corridor where no guest ever goes, a ledger hung with my name in it. In my pocket, a watch kept time without asking permission. The turning point wasn't a roar. It was a series of small, precise clicks, the sound a lock makes when all the right teeth align. I hadn't planned the photo or Greg's lie, or the delivery kid with bad timing that turned out to be perfect. I had only planned to be ready. Sometimes that's enough. I went home and put the lanyard on a hook by the door where Emily's kindergarten drawing of our house still hung. Sun too big, windows too small, stick figure me with arms that reached wider than my body. I laughed, alone in the kitchen, because children often prophesy and we don't notice until the day arrives. I made tea. I sat. I let the quiet be loud. The phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is the second shooter. Claire gave me your number. Sending you the high res of that candid. No charge. Some frames you don't sell." I typed back, "Thank you. Some frames you live in." It pinged again, "Good line. Mind if I steal it?" "Only if you don't forget where you heard it," I wrote. When the house settled, I carried the pocket watch to the bedroom and set it carefully on the nightstand beside the folded envelope with the keys. The heartbeat of both steadied into one sound. Tomorrow would bring emails and headlines and offers and threats disguised as philanthropy. It would bring a conversation with my daughter about boundaries and a conversation with myself about grace. It would bring work, the real kind, the kind you can touch. But tonight I lay back, stared at the ceiling Ruth once painted a softer color so Emily would sleep better, and thought, if you don't like the picture they put you in, buy the frame. Then hang the truth where everyone has to pass it to leave. The turning point had passed. What came next wasn't noise. It was justice getting dressed. Justice doesn't arrive with sirens. It shows up in work boots before dawn, a clipboard under one arm and a thermos under the other, asking, "Where do you want me?" So that's how I began. Not with a press conference, not with a banner, but with a broom. Monday morning, I clocked in at Waverly before the sun could decide what kind of day to be. The house was quiet, the good kind, like a stage before the first violin warms its throat. Claire was already there, sleeves rolled, hair up, a general with a gentle voice. "Owner things?" she teased. "Human things," I corrected, and started by walking with maintenance through the parts of the property that never make the brochures: boiler rooms, storage cages, the alley where deliveries come half frozen or too warm. I learned which door sticks in humidity and which circuit blows if you plug in the extra samovar. I asked names. I said them back until they stuck. I wrote them on a small pad I keep in my pocket. Jasmine Kitchen. Arturo Grounds. Dom Audio. Names are how you own a story without signing a deed. By 9, the inbox had turned into weather. Articles. Inquiries. A real estate blog called me a mysterious everyman, which made me laugh and then wince. Greg's Foundation emailed a congratulatory draft statement that somehow congratulated themselves 3 times. Veronica's assistant requested a meeting to align on narrative. Elaine forwarded a stack of vendor questions with her neat, merciful notes attached. Tate, steady as a fence post, sent a text. "You good? Need me to fly in and pretend to be your muscle?" "My muscle is a mop," I wrote back. "Stay put." The first real volley came at 10:17 a.m. An email from Brooke, subject line, "Photo usage and brand cohesion." The body was a manifesto. Daniel. In light of the weekend's developments, it's imperative that the public-facing imagery of Waverly House remain on message. We propose a revised visual strategy that positions the venue as tradition reimagined and leverages the Foundation's long-standing civic partnerships. We'll need to approve any new images, particularly the candid of you and Emily circulating informally. That photo, while touching, does not align with the established aesthetic and risks diluting the premium positioning of the brand. Kindly confirm you'll remove the candid from all official channels and refrain from distributing it further. Best. Brooke. Creative Director, Optic and Company. I read it twice because some sentences arrived in costumes so audacious you had to let them finish their performance. I forwarded it to Claire with a single line. "Let's align on our brand." Then I typed a reply to Brooke. "Brooke, thank you for your note. Waverly House's brand is hospitality with a memory. We'll be using the candid image of father and daughter in a small display in the staff corridor and in the About section of our website to illustrate the simplest thing we stand for: people over optics. We will, of course, continue showcasing the venue's beauty and our vendors' work with the same high standards you admire. But we won't erase the moments that matter simply because they don't match a mood board. Best. Daniel. Steward, Waverly House. I sent it. I told Claire to print the candid on mat and frame it. Not in the lobby, no need to turn a private truth into a billboard, but in the corridor with the ledgers, where staff catch breath between miracles. I had a small plaque made to slide beneath, the picture they forgot to ask for. At noon Greg called. Men like him don't prefer phone calls. They prefer rooms they can dominate with temperature. The fact that he called meant he felt a draft. "Mr. Hart," he began, warmth calibrated. "We should discuss integration." "We should," I agreed, and let the silence work for me. Silence is expensive for men who rent attention by the acre. Our foundation has relationships that could be mutually beneficial, he continued. City council, heritage committees, gala circuits. It would be irresponsible of me not to offer them. I appreciate the offer, I said. What do you want in return? Nothing undue, he said, full offended. A seat on an advisory board. Input on partnership messaging. Regular recognition. So, I summarized, credit and a key you can claim you turned. He chuckled, conceding the point. Optics are part of stewardship. You're a practical man. You understand the stage requires the set. I'm building a backstage, I said. The stage will take care of itself. A beat. He shifted tack. There's also the matter of the photo situation, he said. It's messy. Truth often is. Perception is. An expensive hobby, I finished for him. I remember. He paused longer this time. You're making this harder than it needs to be. No, I said gently. I'm making it honest. Hard was watching my daughter decide where her father looked like he belonged. Hard is keeping dignity quiet when you've bought the deed. I looked around the office at a wall calendar full of other people's happiness. This is work. He exhaled. We'll be in touch, he said, code for we'll look for leverage. I let him get off the phone believing there was some left. After lunch, I sat with Elaine and Claire in the ballroom where light practices its scales. We made a list titled What We Are. We honor contracts. We pay staff on time and more when we can. We tell the truth, including the small ones. We host beauty that doesn't exclude. We leave the place better than we found it. Add one, Claire said, tapping her pen. We invest in the community that spends its hours making other people's big days look easy. So we wrote, 6. We return some of what we earn to kids who don't get invited to rooms like this. Scholarship. Elaine suggested. 2, I said. 1 in Ruth's name for hospitality and culinary arts. 1 in my mother's for trades. Braiding hair and wiring houses feed families just as well as law degrees. Claire smiled like someone had shifted a box off her chest. Applications in spring. Mentors on site. Mentors paid, I added. No internships that pretend exposure is currency. We wrote it down. Words on paper don't change the world, but they make good promises heavy. The next piece of justice came not from me but from Emily. She called and asked if we could meet at my place that evening. When she arrived, she wore no makeup and remorse like a coat she planned to hang in a thrift store forever. I told Jason I needed to do something without him, she said, sliding into her old spot at the kitchen table, where the grain still remembers our crayons. He asked if it was about optics. I told him it was about respect. I poured tea because grief and joy both talk better with something warm in hand. She set her phone face down. I'm writing an open letter, she said, cheeks hot, eyes steady. Not to go viral. Not to drag. To say what happened and why it was wrong. To apologize without explaining. To ask other people my age to stop outsourcing their morality to a camera. Show me, I said. She unfolded a page. Her handwriting had grown up, the loopy little girl loops smoothed into something deliberate. My name is Emily Hart. This weekend I married the man I love at a venue my father now owns because I forgot who taught me what love looks like. I asked my father to stay out of my wedding photos because I was afraid of what people would think. Those people have names, donors, clients, friends of friends. None of them have ever changed my tire at 1 a.m. or braided my hair before a test or sat through 2 hours of 5th grade recorder to clap like I'd played Carnegie Hall. My father did those things. He belongs in every picture of my life. To anyone watching me, don't do what I did. If you must choose between clean lines and true ones, choose truth every time. The photos will age better. So will your soul. Dad, I'm sorry. I love you. I'm putting this here so I can't edit it later. Emily. I read it, and the words arranged my insides back into a shape I recognized. It's good, I said. It might make you a target. I deserve a few tomatoes, she said. Besides, I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for the girl under our dining table with the chipped teacup. We posted it together from her account. No filters. No carousel. Just text that made a noise the algorithm didn't recognize but still had to respect. Within an hour, there were more comments than there were chairs at the wedding. Half were kind. A quarter were cruel. A quarter were silent people, reading, deciding who they wanted to be next time the room asked them. Jason called her twice while we ate reheated leftovers and laughed at nothing because that's what relief asks you to do. She let it go to voicemail both times. He needs space to practice humility, she said. That's a class he missed. Before she left, I handed her a small frame. For your new home, I said. Inside, the candid, printed small. On the back, I'd written the line I gave the second shooter. Some frames you live in. She held it to her chest. This goes by the front door, she said. So we trip over the lesson every time we leave. Justice the next day put on a suit. A letter arrived from Greg's law firm, words focused like a laser pointer. Concerns regarding defamation, brand dilution, and venue governance. It implied consequences. It CC'd people for intimidation points. Elaine read it, snorted, and marked it up with neat red edits like a schoolteacher correcting a show-off. Stall tactics, she said. Empty chairs in big rooms throwing their weight around. Do we respond? I asked. We honor, she said, tapping our list. We tell the truth. We acknowledge receipt. We invite a meeting on site with counsel present. And then we keep going. We did. That same day we announced the scholarships quietly, through our channels with an application date and an email address that routed to a real human. We posted a photo of the kitchen crew laughing on a smoke break with the caption, "The Heart of the House." We added a page to the website titled Stewardship with 4 paragraphs about boilers and beauty and why the best rooms are the ones that remember the people who clean them. And I made a call I'd wanted to make since Saturday, to Luis at the shop. You still got that old sign painter who owed you a favor? I asked. You mean Eddie Letter Perfect? He said. He's alive and opinionated. Can he paint a small sign for a garden without making it look like a gift shop? Tell him it's for Ruth, Luis said. He'll make it sing. On Friday, a week to the hour after I signed the ledger, we installed a narrow iron arch at the entrance to the side garden, the one with the stubborn hydrangeas and the bench nobody knew was the best seat in the county at sunset. Across the curve, Eddie lettered in gold leaf, Teacup Walk. Underneath, a brass plaque, in honor of the mothers who keep cups full and the children who remember. I didn't announce it. I just walked there after close, sat on the bench, and listened to the world do its small work, leaves talking to air, a bird bragging, gravel telling a story about a foot that just passed. When I looked up, Claire was standing at the arch, reading. She didn't say anything. She just sat with me until the light went soft enough to make a promise. Veronica, of course, did not appreciate unsanctioned arches. She scheduled a meeting. She arrived with a folder as thick as a hymn book and a smile built like scaffolding. Greg came to never miss an opportunity to carry a room with your tie. We sat in the small library off the ballroom, wood that had seen secrets better than these. Elaine joined with a legal pad she used like a scalpel. Claire took notes because accuracy is armor. First, Veronica said, we have concerns about the messaging shift. The website reads, provincial. It reads human, I said. Our customers are human. You'll alienate the premium segment, she argued. We'll attract people who want to be proud in their skin, I replied. That's the premium segment I'm building. Greg interlaced his fingers. Fine. Philosophies differ. Let's talk practicalities. Our foundation would like naming rights for the ballroom in exchange for an annual grant. It's a win-win. Name it what? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The Fairchild Ballroom, he said, smiling the way men smile when they hang their names around other people's work. I thumbed the pocket watch, felt the assurance of old brass. No, I said, polite as a closed door. I won't be selling the walls. Contributions are welcome and will be recognized on the stewardship page and in our annual report. But names stay attached to people who built this place with their hours. Veronica leaned forward. Daniel, be reasonable. This is how institutions thrive. Institutions thrive on the backs of people who never get plaques, I said. And I'm going to balance the ledger a little while I'm here. Greg's mouth thinned. He changed tacks with a predator's efficiency. Your daughter is part of our family now, he said. Cooperation benefits everyone. Resistance costs. She's part of my family first, I said, steady. And the only cost I'm measuring is the price of looking at myself in the mirror. Elaine coughed a single surgical sound. For the record, she said, Waverly House is solvent and not accepting encumbered funds. Veronica sat back, smiling like a cat deciding whether a bird is worth the pounce. You'll find this city is small, she said. I grew up on a road with no streetlights, I replied. I know how to walk in the dark. The meeting ended with a flurry of thank yous that meant nothing and handshakes that meant see you at the next skirmish. They left, coats whispering like yes men. In the doorway, Veronica paused, glanced at Teacup Walk visible through the French doors, and said, not quite able to help herself, it's charming. Which, from her, was a concession the size of a cathedral. Small acts accumulate. Justice collects interest. In the months that followed, 3 things happened that tied the bow in ways I couldn't have scripted if I tried. First, Jason asked for coffee. Not a power coffee. A folding chair, paper cup. I'm trying to be a man my wife respects coffee. He arrived without Greg or a tie and sat like someone who'd been told a secret by pain. I grew up confusing center stage with purpose, he said without preamble. I thought if I looked right and the room applauded I was good. Then you did what you did. And I realized I've never built anything that would keep working if I left. You can start, I said. You're young. I am, he conceded. And I am stubborn in the stupid ways. I laughed. Stubborn is a tool. Stupid is a phase. He rubbed his face. I've been wrong. About you. About a lot. Apology accepted, I said, because sometimes you spare a man the humiliation of groveling so he can stand up and be useful. I want to contribute to the scholarships, he said. Quietly. No naming rights. Do it because you want to be different, I said. Not because you want to look different. Both can be true, he admitted. But I'm aiming for the first. Second, the candid found a life I didn't ask for. Couples began requesting the honest light staircase, for their own candid shots, a little corner near the back stairs where people looked like people. Photographers started slipping into the staff corridor to read the line under the frame and ended up taking portraits of dishwashers on their breaks. A local magazine ran a feature titled "The Year Venues Remembered Their Workers," and for once the article had more than adjectives. Third, a girl from 3 neighborhoods over 15, fierce, tired, came with her mother to tour the kitchens after school. Her name was Nia. She ran her fingers along the stainless steel and asked the pastry chef 3 questions in a row that made him look at her like a colleague. You got time after 6th period to peel potatoes? He asked. She did. The first Ruth Scholarship recipient, the fall after, was a no-drama ceremony in the garden. She wore a thrift store dress and a grin that knocked me back a step. I want to run a place better than this one day, she said, not arrogant, just sure. You should, I replied. And then you should hire me to sweep. Revenge is an ugly word when you picture torches and pitchforks. Mine was a ledger balanced, a frame widened, A door opened and left that way. The people who needed to squirm did. The people who needed to stand got a stool. The person who needed to grow me kept a pocket watch handy to remember timing matters more than spectacle. Of course, the old guard didn't evaporate. Greg didn't send me a fruit basket and a vow to change. Veronica did not enroll in a course called How Not to Be a Snob. Brooke continued to sell clean lines to clients who needed life to behave like layouts. But at Waverly House, in the small democracy behind the scenes, the weather shifted. On the first anniversary of the wedding, Emily and Jason returned not for optics, not to stage a brand, but to sit on Teacup Walk with me at dusk. She brought a new chipped teacup from a thrift store, cream with a hairline crack running like a road on a map. She set it on the plaque for a moment, then took it home to put on her shelf. "We're trying," Jason said into the evening. "We mess up. We say we're sorry. We mean it. We try again. That's marriage," I said. "And plumbing." Emily leaned her head on my shoulder. "I had a dream last night," she said. "I walked down an aisle. At the end there wasn't emptiness. There was a bench. You were on it. I saved you a seat," I said. We sat until the sprinkler clicked on like a polite reminder that the world keeps itself alive when you're not looking. The house behind us breathed. I took out the pocket watch and wound it slow. Time does what it does. So do people once they decide. Justice, you learn, is not a single event. It's a practice you wear until it shapes you. Mine looked like showing up, paying attention, saying people's names, writing checks I could cash with my back, and refusing to let my love be curated out of view. It looked like a daughter who learned, a son-in-law who started, a staff that believed, and a garden that kept time with a watch older than all our mistakes. Some nights, closing up, I walked that corridor with the ledgers and the candid. I touched the glass lightly like you touch a chapel door. I read the names of stewards, some generous, some vain, all temporary. I look at the photo, her laugh, my face put back together, and think, this is the only kind of revenge worth telling your grandchildren. The kind that turns shame into stewardship, insult into invitation, a no into the key that unlocks the right room. When the last light clicks off and the building holds its breath, I lock the door and slip the watch back into my pocket. It ticks like it did the day Ruth gave it to me on our 5th anniversary, back when we were 2 kids pretending it forever. Timing matters more than money, the note with Louisa's watch had said. It still does. I drive home on a road that remembers me. The sky shows off. I let it. In my rear view, Waverly House sits steady, a frame around 1,000 futures. In my front seat, a thermos cools, a clipboard rests, the small tools that turned a humiliation into a harvest. Revenge was never the point. Dignity was. And peace. I found both by buying the floor beneath a room that tried to erase me and then inviting everyone back into dance. Sometimes, the deepest wounds don't come from enemies, they come from the people you love enough to let close. My daughter's words cut sharper than any stranger's insult. You don't belong in my wedding photos. For a while, I let that hurt define me. Then I remembered something my life had taught me again and again: broken things can work again, if you give them time, patience, and clean hands. Buying Waverly House wasn't just a transaction. It was my way of reclaiming dignity without shouting, of standing exactly where I was told I didn't belong. It was proof that you don't have to crash a stage to own it. Justice doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it's a quiet signature, a key in your pocket, and the decision to run things better than the people who tried to keep you out. Today the candid photo hangs where it can't be erased. Emily and I walk Teacup Walk together, and she really knows I've always been part of her story. The moral? Never let someone else frame your worth. If they lock you out, build your own door and keep it open. Please subscribe to this channel.